Hey, it's Andrew from Five Little Ducks Resale. On today's episode, we're going to take a different turn. We're going to talk about some frustrations that I've had with eBay over the last few weeks. So stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Along with my wife, Jessica, we are full-time online resellers, which means that we go to places like garage sales and thrift stores and estate sales, and we buy stuff for cheap, and then we flip them online on sites like eBay, Mercari, and Poshmark. So I have 3 stories today to tell you guys about some frustrations that I've had over the last couple of weeks. Now, none of these things are earth-shattering and they haven't derailed our business in any way, but it's to give you a more accurate and realistic glimpse of what we deal with as resellers from day to day. Before I begin though, I need to do one thing. 1 second. Oh, okay, that's better. All right, so as I was saying, there are 3 things that I was going to discuss today, none of which are super impactful or negative, but they're just basically annoyances. So the first one starts out very much the same as the missing backpack from a few videos back. As I was scrolling through our eBay stats page, I noticed that our on-time tracking upload, it had gone down by a couple of fractions of a point. But I knew something was wrong because we typically ship same or next day. As I was scrolling through my recent solds, I noticed that there was one that had shown up as not being delivered. And it was this item. This was a Thai Beanie Baby that we had taken a best offer on. I hadn't gotten any notification from the buyer that the package hadn't arrived, so I proactively reached out and let her know that the tracking number was mysteriously missing from my end, and I wanted to see if the package had shown up for her. She replied letting me know that the package hadn't arrived yet, so I let her know that I'd be opening up a package research case with the post office. So as you can see from the timeline of the tracking number, I generated the original tracking number and shipping label on August 17. The following morning, that tracking number was transmitted to the post office so that it was part of their record. Then you can see that on August 23rd, that was the day that I opened up the package research case. After I'd filled out all the information, I asked the buyer to give me a few more days so that I could get word from the post office to see what happened. In the research case that I opened up, I specifically asked them to not go directly to the receiving post office because, like in the case of the backpack, they would have just come back and said, no, we don't have any record of the tracking number ever arriving, so therefore it was never sent, which is exactly what happened before. So I specifically wanted them to check with the receiving post office, or the incoming post office, to ensure that the package was scanned as being received. These types of events usually take 24 hours to be able to hear anything back, so I decided to wait until the following day to take any more action. The next day, I had gotten a notification from the buyer saying that there was some movement on the tracking number. So I took a look and sure enough, it said that it was slated to arrive that very same day. So as you can see from the following steps of the tracking number, conveniently, one day after I opened up that package research case, there had become movement on the item. So what I can piece together from all this is that when our receiving post office got the item, they never scanned it in as being received. It still went through the normal motion of being shipped out because it took 4 or 5 days for it to arrive in the Fort Wayne, Indiana regional distribution unit. eBay interpreted that as being a late upload on tracking information, and that's the reason for the ding on the account. But in the end, the most important thing was that the buyer received the item and thanked me for being diligent about keeping track of it. Now, the only downside from this outcome was, apart from the minor annoyance of all this, was that we still have a late shipment ding on our account. You're only allowed so many late shipments before it starts to affect your top-rated seller status. We're only at 0.06% right now, so I'm not really worried about it. But it just sucks that we got dinged for something that wasn't our fault. The second story I want to relay is a little bit strange, and as of yet I have no resolution. So I'm going to outlay what I know so far, and hopefully I can get some sort of word from eBay as to what caused this. I'm not confident that they're going to get back to me with any pertinent information. So the story is this. I was sitting on the couch the other night and I got a notification on my phone that an item sold. And I looked at the title and thought that it was a great sale because it was a civil regime hoodie that I was selling for my oldest daughter. I had this item listed at $89.99 plus shipping. After I got the notification on my phone, I went to the computer to confirm the sale and to see the details about it. And I was shocked to see this. According to the sold page, this item only sold for $16.21. I had a little bit of a panic attack because there's no way that I would have sold this item for that low amount. After all, this was a $90 sweatshirt, and there's no way that I would have offered anything close to $16. And what made this more strange was that my wife was asleep at the time, and she wasn't even on her phone, so she wouldn't have been able to send out any offers. I opened up a chat response with one of eBay's representatives, and I explained the situation the best that I could. That I was just sitting there, the item sold, and I had not sent out any offers, I hadn't received any offers, I made no modifications to the item whatsoever. So I wasn't sure how this would have sold for such a low amount. After a few moments, the eBay representative told me that they did see a modification to the item, but it was back in May of this year. I let them know that I made no modifications whatsoever, and I wasn't sure if this was somehow a high-tech scam or some high-tech hack to my account. They assured me that they would do some investigation, but unfortunately they claimed that all of their investigations are confidential and that I wouldn't know any sort of resolution. Their only suggestion was to cancel the order, to block the buyer, and to move on. Now, interestingly enough, the buyer didn't immediately pay for the item. And when I looked at the buyer's account, I noticed that they had a 0 feedback rating, but their account was opened up in 2019. And it's awfully strange that an account that old would have no feedback, either as a buyer or as a seller. So needless to say, I canceled the order, and because the buyer hadn't paid, there was no money to refund. The item has since been relisted, but it's so weird to me that this would have happened. I've never experienced this before. And like I said, I'd like to reach back out to eBay to see if I can get some sort of resolution or to get some sort of answer as to what happened, but I'm not confident that I'm going to hear anything back. So if I do, I'll be sure to update you guys and keep you in the loop. So again, that story wasn't, detrimental or bad. It was a little bit panicky at first, but I'm glad that I was able to cancel the order, relist it, and move on. We're now at the final story of today, and this is the most annoying of the three, and to be perfectly honest, I'm still a little bit ticked off about it. So let me see if I can refrain from making myself more angry by reliving this situation, but here goes. A number of days back, I sold this item. It's a Magnavox Dvd VHS Combo unit. This item was being listed as a non-working item. In other words, I had done some testing, I deemed it inoperable, and I was listing it for parts only or repair. In fact, this was clearly described in the item title, in the item condition location of the listing, and also in the item description as well. So there are 3 distinct areas where I specifically said that this item was not working, broken, or for parts or repair. I even ended up taking a best offer of only $13 for this particular item. I treated the item as if it was a working unit. I wrapped it numerous times in bubble wrap and packed it carefully into a large box and sent it to UPS ground. A number of days after it had been received, the buyer sends a message saying that the item was damaged in transit and wanted a partial refund. In the pictures that he sent back, he outlined a crack that was in the top of the item. I replied to the buyer that the item was being sold as a non-working item for parts or repair and that I wasn't accepting returns for this specific item. He claims that because the item was damaged that he could open up a return regardless, and so I could either pay him $10 or he could just return it for his full amount of money. While that almost sounded like a threat, I replied as best as I could that again, I was selling this item as a non-working item and that it was being sold parts or repair and that I didn't accept returns on it. I took a closer look at the picture that he sent, and although there was a crack in the top, this crack was shown in one of my original pictures. I felt that because this item was being sold for parts or repair, a known non-working item, that I wouldn't have to disclose any sort of cosmetic defects. To me, that's almost like buying a car from a junkyard that you know isn't working, but then returning it because there's a scratch on the side. I let him know once again that the original listing clearly showed that there was a crack in the top, but he was insistent that in addition to that, there was a piece of metal that was broken off inside the unit. I can't prove that one or not. He claims that he sent a picture of that item or that broken piece to me, but I have yet to see that. The buyer proceeded to open up a return, and that's when I decided to contact eBay. Rather than go through a chat session this time, I opted to have an eBay representative call me so that I could better explain to them what was going on. eBay allows a return of an item to be opened if it gets damaged in transit, even if the seller isn't accepting returns on it. It's part of their money-back guarantee. As I looked more closely at the return, the buyer had claimed in it that the listing stated that the item had only one side of the unit working, either the DVD side or the VHS side. He didn't specify. However, in my original listing, that wasn't the case. I made it very clear that the item was not even able to power on, and so no further testing of the unit was even able to be done. I feel that this in and of itself is a misuse of eBay's return policy for a damaged item. He's claiming that because one side didn't work, and that it was damaged in shipping, that he had the clear opportunity to send it back and get a refund. As I was relaying this information, she agreed with me that this sounded like a misuse of the eBay return system. She suggested that because I couldn't do anything right then and there, we had to wait about 4 days before the return case had the option to have eBay intervene. So I waited 4 days with no further contact to the buyer, and on the 4th day, or actually on the 5th day, I asked eBay to intervene. I filled out all the information and I provided them these 2 pictures. The first picture, as you can see here, was one of the original photos from my listing. It clearly shows the crack in the top of the unit. This picture is the one that the buyer sent when he originally contacted me. It obviously shows the same crack in the same position. I annotated these 2 pictures and included this information along with my request for eBay's intervention to see what they could do. About 10 minutes later, I got a notification from eBay saying that I was being forced to accept the return. At this point, I was seriously mad. I got on the phone again with eBay and I had to walk through the story one more time to the representative and explain to them how this was completely not fair. It was a misuse of the eBay system, and what the buyer was claiming was completely false. Of course, I didn't get anywhere. The only information that the customer service representative told me was that once a return is opened up, there's nothing that can stop that process from completing until either A, the item is returned and the tracking number shows that, or B, 2 weeks' time has passed and the case is automatically closed because the buyer took no action to return the item. Just to be clear on a few things, I accept returns on nearly everything that I sell. And in most cases, I offer free returns, which means if a person doesn't like the item, or in the case of a piece of clothing it doesn't fit, then I will gladly have that item being sent back at my expense. However, in this case, this was a known broken item. I clearly stated that a number of times in the listing, the item description, the title, so on and so forth. Somehow I feel that the buyer knew that he could exploit the system by claiming that the item had been damaged in transit. It's only been a few days since this all transpired, and so I have no information yet as to the outcome. As of yet, the buyer has not gone through the process of printing the label and sending it back, but I would not be surprised if I see a notification stating that it was being sent back any day now. Now, we're blessed in the fact that we don't typically get a lot of returns. We try to really describe items as best as possible. We try to point out even the most minor flaw. But again, I always go back to the analogy of the junk car in this example. If I buy a junk car from a junkyard and then return it because there's a scratch, I think there's something wrong with that. Maybe I have a different take on this. Maybe I'm just upset still at this situation. I don't know. However, I think that this is an issue that eBay should be addressing in the fact that there's really no recourse for a seller in this predicament. So what do you think? What would you have done as the seller? Would you have just offered the $10 refund right off the bat? Maybe in hindsight, I should have done that. But in this case, I think I was justified in holding out. So in the end, this is one of those instances that can really ruin your day. And in fact, I was pretty mad about this for the majority of the day that this took place. But as luck would have it, I received a really nice message from a buyer regarding an item that I sold to her that I thought may have turned out bad in the end. That item was this. These were a pair of candy corn shoes that we bought from that original craft sale last year. These shoes had no size in them, and so these were sold with a size estimate. As you can see here in the title, it was just an estimate. So when we sent these out, again, I believe that we took a best offer for these. I had the notion in the back of my mind that we could be seeing these back again as a return. But luckily, the buyer sent me this. They arrived super quick and they fit perfectly. So that in the end made my day, and I did relay that sentiment back to her that I really appreciated that message and that it turned my day around. So even though we might deal with a lot of negative issues about this business, we still have to find the positive, and luckily that positive made all the difference. Well, thanks again for indulging me on those stories. Hopefully they weren't too long-winded and everything made sense. So if you have any comments or questions, go ahead and just drop them below. At this point, let's focus on some positives and look at some items that have sold out of our eBay store over the last few days. Starting off the list, we have this Papacitos pint glass. This was the 20 years of fajitas and Ritas collectible pint glass, and it sold for $9.99 plus shipping. The next item was this vintage Avon cologne for men called Far and Away, and it sold for $28.79 plus shipping. Then we had a Beanie Baby sell. This was Groovy, the pastel tie-dye bear, and he sold for $6.99 plus shipping. Up next was a Stampin' Up! Mini punch lot. This was the tree, ornament, and heart punch, and this lot of 3 sold for $10.99 plus shipping. The next item that sold was from the estate sale where we found all of the baseball cards. This was the vintage 1991 sealed Donruss Los Angeles Dodgers complete team set, and it sold for $2.99 plus shipping. Up next, a pair of Harley Davidson jeans sold. These went for $19.99 plus shipping. And here it is, the current bane of my existence, the Magnavox Dvd Vcr Combo. Again, this sold for a best offer of $13 plus shipping, and I wouldn't be surprised if I saw it back in a few days. Up next was a new listing from the Gina consignment lot. This was a purse. This was a Charles David women's burgundy velour clutch purse, and it sold for a best offer of $11 plus shipping. Then we had another Hallmark ornament sell. This was the Rainbow Bright ornament that we had multiple quantities of, and this one ended up selling for $18.99 plus shipping. Then we had another international sale for a plush item. This was the Thai Dear Grandpa bear, and it sold for $4 plus international shipping. Up next, a hat. It was this Chico Salinas snapback hat, and it sold for a best offer of $7.99 plus shipping. Then we had a double sale. This was 2 sets of rubber stamps. The first of which was the Garden Silhouette 6-piece wood mount rubber stamp set, and the second one was a 3-piece Still Life stems set. Together, these sold for $17.98 plus shipping. Then we had a streak of plush sell, the first of which was this Disney Animal Kingdom meerkat, 14-inch tall stuffed animal, and it sold for $8 plus shipping. Then we had another Beanie Baby sell. It was the Thai Sammy, the multicolored bear, and he sold for $8.54 plus shipping. And then this 15-inch Build-A-Bear also sold. This was the Little Chestnut Cub, and it sold for $9.99 plus shipping. We then had another international sale for this. This was a Ray-Ban hard shell case for some glasses, and it sold for $9.99 free shipping. So technically, even though we didn't charge shipping for this listing, because it was an international sale through the global shipping program, the buyer did end up having to pay international shipping. The second to last item was this unbranded Sheltie Dog Mug, and it sold for $6.29. And rounding out today's list of items was this Stampin' Up! 1 1/4 inch plain edge round circle paper punch, and it sold for $8.99 plus shipping. That is everything that I had on the agenda for today's episode. If you like the content of today's video, go ahead and click that like button, and if you feel moved to do so, go ahead and subscribe as well. We've picked up a number of new subscribers lately, and it's really rewarding to see those numbers grow. So again, thanks for everyone's support who has recently subscribed to the channel. As always, thanks for watching until the very end, and we'll catch you on the next one.